In this just-in-time learning module, you'll learn about the two different types of assessments and specifically how one can promote student success. Click Next to continue. Instructors can sometimes design their course to teach to their big test. First, they'll start with a lesson objective, which leads to lesson content and instructions. This usually happens in a way of direct instruction. The student then goes home to complete homework outside of class and acquire some points for completion. This process is repeated a couple times during the term, and then at the end we have the big test, the final exam. Now, is that it? Is there another way to design? Let's review assessment types. So the final exam is a summative assessment, which allows the instructor to make a judgment on the student's learning at the end of a course. However, there's another form of assessment. Formative assessment, such as reflection, self-check quizzes, or concept maps, can be used during the instruction, so both the student and the instructor can assess how they're doing in progression towards the outcome. At this point, you may be thinking that you'd like to see some examples. Select which assignment type you'd like to start with. Formative assessments are given during an instructional unit. This assessment checks for student understandings of the lesson content thus far. The information gained from this assessment guides the next steps of instruction. These results help both the instructor and student consider the additional learning opportunities needed to correct any misconceptions and to ensure success. A concept map is a great way for students to explain new concepts and vocabulary in a visual representation. Students also show connections between prior and new knowledge. Instructors can then assess if their students have a good grasp on the new concept or if students are struggling with connections, vocabulary, or concepts altogether. Click Next to view another example of formative assessment. A 3-minute paper is a formative assessment used when students have learned a large amount of content. Students are given a very simple prompt, such as, "Tell me everything you know about electrons." Students have 3 minutes to essentially brain dump and connect all the new knowledge together in writing. Instructors can read these short papers to determine the comprehension level of their students, so following instruction can adapt to what the students need to strengthen before moving on. Click Next to view another example of formative assessment. In this formative assessment, students are given common misconceptions about the topic. Students then explain why they agree or disagree with it. This can be done in a think, pair, share model, where students first write down their own response on a flashcard and then share or discuss it with a partner. Flashcards are collected for analysis. Instructors can then determine if misconceptions need to be clarified before moving on. If you've reviewed both assessment types, select the Apply Your Learning button. If not, select the other assessment type. Summative assessment is given after an instructional unit. This assessment provides instructors and students with information about the attained content knowledge. Summative assessments often result in grades and evaluate student learning by comparing it against a standard or benchmark. A final project is a common summative assessment. Students apply all of their content knowledge to create something of their own, which is the highest level of learning, synthesize. Instructors can evaluate just how much a student has learned and to what degree. Click Next to view another summative assessment example. A final exam is the most used summative assessment. A variety of content questions are gathered and students answer them to the best of their ability. Although tests are easy to evaluate, they may not be the best option for all students to show their knowledge. Click Next to view another example of summative assessment. A student portfolio is an organized physical or digital folder of student work throughout an instructional unit or term. Student-created work is a display of gained content knowledge and student growth. If you've reviewed both assessment types, click the Apply Your Learning button. If not, select the other assessment type. Time to apply your knowledge. Complete the 5-question quiz to gauge your understanding of the 2 assessment types. Start quiz. Number 1, multiple choice question. What assessment type is used to check student understanding in the middle of a unit? Possible answers: A, formative; B, pre-assessment, C, summative. Click Submit when you're done. Question 2, multiple choice. Which of these are possible formative assessments? Possible answers. A, self-check quiz. B, concept reflection blog. C, concept map using academic vocabulary. D, all of the above. Click Submit when you're finished. Question 3, true or false? A summative assessment is used to show student understanding at the midpoint of an instructional unit. Possible answers. A, true. B, false. Click Submit when you're finished. Question 4, true or false? A formative assessment is just as much a tool for the instructor as it is for the student. Both parties are able to assess how they are doing at working towards the learning objective. Possible answers. A, true. B, false. Choose Submit when you're finished. Question 5, multiple choice. The blank assessment type is used to make a final judgment on student learning at the end of an instructional unit. Possible answers. A, summative. B, formative. Select Submit when you're finished. How does this change an instructional plan? A lesson still needs to start with objectives, which leads to weekly content. Instructors still give direct instruction with some type of independent practice. However, after the practice, a formative assessment can be given. Multiple benefits can come from this added assessment. 1. Students can provide feedback on the degree of understanding of the direct instruction and homework. 2. Students can practice the rigor of an assessment. And 3. Most importantly, students and the instructors then have a chance to adjust for success. Students can then be better prepared for a summative assessment. What does this look like? Professor Edwards is a chemistry teacher who is ready to start his next class. Okay, class, now that we've learned the new vocabulary, you're ready to move on to this week's new concepts. John, an English second language student, says, Professor Edwards, I practiced the vocabulary flashcards and I did well on the word definition quiz. Professor Edwards is proud of John and states, Great, let's talk about the relationship of electrons and neutrons. John starts to get confused and raises his hand. Professor Edwards, I don't think I understand. Professor Edwards realizes that both he and his students need to display exactly what they understand so far before moving on. Okay, class, let's focus on what we know so far so that we can build knowledge. You're going to create a concept map using pictures, vocabulary, words to connect the concepts we've learned thus far. Students work together to create a concept map using textbooks, class notes, and conversations with peers to best label and connect ideas, academic language, and the use of visual representation. The instructor then takes time to evaluate these maps to ensure that misconceptions or misconnections of concepts are not present, that students have a strong understanding of the content thus far and are indeed ready to build upon that knowledge. The instructor adjusts his lesson to meet the needs of his student. Let's review. Formative assessment is given in the middle of an instructional unit, provides students and instructor with a progress measurement, and the results from this assessment aids in the adjustment of teaching and learning for the rest of the instructional unit. Summative assessment is given at the end of an instructional unit, provides the instructor with a final measurement on student learning, and the results from this assessment provide the final grade given to the student at the end of the instructional unit. It's time to play to prove your knowledge. Click Start to begin the Jeopardy! Style game.